Hey y'all, and welcome back to my channel. In this tutorial we are going to be making this donut tumbler with a drip inspired by Dark Arts Craftopedia on Instagram. She is incredibly talented. I mean, look at those donut toppers. It looks like a real donut sitting on top of that cup. We are not going to tackle that in this video, just the tumbler, and then at the end we will announce who won this for my birthday giveaway. For the tumbler, we are using a 16-ounce fatty from PARISH Tumblers. You can see that there is some serious scuff marks on this cup. This is actually my second time attempting this tumbler. I did not like the first color whatsoever. And then we're going in with streaks of pink pizzazz, mint green, and lavender from the FLIPN Awesome Paint collection from CRYSTALAC. There's no rhyme or reason or pattern for which I am painting these on. I'm just using a makeup brush and brushing them on in streaks. The first coat, I'm not too concerned about it being perfect, which technically speaking, these are not in any perfect order in the end regardless. I just wanted to have that pastel, like every which way you turn the tumbler, it's going to be a little bit of a different color. I wanted that effect. The FLIPN Awesome Paints I have used before in multiple tutorials. They are incredible. As you can see, they are nice and thin but still pigmented, so it's really easy to blend these colors together. They go on ultra smooth and they dry a matte finish but not chalky. And they really grab a hold of that stainless. You cannot scratch this paint off of a tumbler. You really have to put some elbow grease into it to even take this off with acetone. So these are really high quality paints. I absolutely love them. The Artistry Color Flex paints that I have also used in my tutorials in the past will work for this as well. They do go on smooth. You can blend them well together. These three colors just matched exactly what I had in mind, so I grabbed these and went for it. Now, once I painted the tumbler, I did go in with my heat gun and dried that up really quick. You don't want to apply a tremendous amount of heat, just allow the warm air to flow onto the cup, or you can of course use a hairdryer to help that a little bit more and not have such intense heat on it. Allow that to cool down and then you can add on your second coat. I also used my heat gun to help quickly dry that second coat, allowed it to cool all the way so my glue would have a longer work time, and then I went in with the Color Flex glitter glue. You can also use the CRYSTALAC glitter glue if you have that on hand, Mod Podge, or the epoxy method. It doesn't matter, just get that glitter on the tumbler. So I brushed that on nice and even all over my tumbler, and then went in with Alter Ego from PDB Creative Studio and just dumped it all over the cup to get nice even coverage. If you don't have Alter Ego on hand, I will list the link down below for y'all, as well as a discount code, and you can use any opal that is on site. Each opal will have a different color shift, but the goal here is to allow that color underneath to show through, and it will do so with each opal. You may have a little bit of a gold shift, green, pink, blue. You just pick your favorite and go with it. So I found this file on Etsy, and it's actually a file for one of the cold cups. So it was already curved to fit a tapered tumbler. I couldn't find one that was just the pattern itself or just the donut images, but it's fine. We made this work, right? So I cut these out with the donuts being a little over 2 inches wide for this tumbler. I started weeding, but those little sprinkles wanted to come up with that negative space. So we're just going to apply them to the tumbler, and then we will weed them once they are adhered to that surface. Now, although we are doing a drip around the rim of the tumbler, I did still place the decals all the way up to the rim. I probably could have come down just a tiny bit to save a little bit of space or the decals. But I want to make sure that if I do add a drip on and there's any of the cup showing through the space in between the drips, then it's going to be filled and the pattern will continue as the rest of the cup. I went in with any of those little dots that I had left over just to fill any negative space, and I did end up with a spot at the bottom that I needed to add another donut, so I did have to cut that and added that on later. And once I had all of the little dots on, I went back through and weeded out all that negative space on my little donuts. Now, this was a pretty brave move, not putting a layer of epoxy in between my decals and my drip. So I really do suggest adding a thin layer of epoxy on before you do your drip, just in case there are any mistakes. You can easily wipe that off without ruining your decals. So I took 30 milliliters of Artistry's 1-to-1 ratio fast set, and I put it in this large cup for multiple reasons. So if you have 30 milliliters in a 30 milliliter little tiny medicine cup, then it's going to cure faster because the epoxy is more condensed in a smaller space. If you have that spread out in a larger cup, then it will help lengthen your time just a bit because the epoxy is thinner and it's more spread out. Plus, you're constantly stirring, constantly moving it around. That is also going to help lengthen the time just a tad bit and give you some more work time so that you can accomplish the drip with a fast set rather than a regular epoxy. So once I had my epoxy mixed, I added in some white Colorflex paint from Artistry Epoxy. I also put in some snow mica to give it just a tiny bit of shimmer from PDB Creative Studio. And then I have Nice and Thick from CC DIY. I added this in probably about 6 times before I was happy with the consistency. You want to add this in very little at a time. And if you're not already wearing a mask because you are mixing epoxy, you should be, make sure that you do have one on when working with this Nice and Thick. You don't want this stuff getting down into your lungs, so definitely wear a mask. And as you can see, I am constantly stirring this around. This is sped up like double time, so don't go through and whip your epoxy. You do want to mix it slowly, get those clumps of the Nice and Thick out. And what you're looking for is a consistency to where you can put that on your stir stick and at the rim of your stirring cup or mixing cup, and you want to make sure that those drips are not really falling down the side of that cup. You want them to be moving ultra slow or hardly moving at all so that when you put them on your tumbler, you're not going to have any issues with them running all the way down the side. This does take quite a bit of time, so make sure you give yourself a good 20 to 30 minutes to work on the drip. And the clip for this was actually a little over 18 minutes long. And that still doesn't include the time that I carried it around with me in my house to babysit the drip and make sure that it stayed exactly where I wanted it to. So as you can see, I just took that epoxy and put it around the rim of my stirring cup, and it pretty much stayed put. So it is ready to go on the tumbler. What I do is I hold my tumbler sideways and I pretty much paint this really thick around the rim. It's best to go thick the very first time instead of having to add more later, because when you add to your drips, it sort of makes layers and it can be kind of wonky in places. So I go on pretty thick around the rim. You can even make this a little bit thicker to where you pull it down just a little bit further on the cup so your drips will start dripping lower. If you're working with a, like say a 30 ounce or a 20 ounce tumbler where there's a lot of space, and then once you have that all around the rim of your cup, you can tap it down on the table, or in this instance this mat is rubber, so just spinning it on that rubber mat, it gives a little bit of friction and sort of shakes the cup, so it's allowing that drip to come down. And then I'm going over very lightly with my torch to start those drips. We worked hard to make sure that this was thick to go around the rim of our tumbler and not drip down too much, so make sure you're also not applying too much heat, or you will sort of reverse that and those drips will definitely go all the way down to the bottom of your tumbler. If your drips seem that they are going too quickly down your tumbler or too far, then just flip it upside down and you can go back and forth until your epoxy sets up a bit to where it's not going to move so much. Once I have added my sprinkles on, I'm just going to take my little weeding pen and I'm going to press all of those sprinkles just slightly into that drip around the tumbler so they're not poking out sideways or any crazy ways, and they are a little bit more flush than they were if I just dropped them on there. I'm not sure where I got these sprinkles from, but I know that PDB Creative Studio has some as well, so I will link those down below for y'all. Once I had all of those sprinkles pressed down and all of those spaces filled, then I popped this on a turner arm and onto my stand from Cami Page Boutique so that I could just watch this drip. I did carry it around with me for just a little while so I can watch and make sure that it didn't drip too far down my tumbler, and by standing it up upside down, it helps control that. When applying epoxy for my final layers, I worked on the bottom of my tumbler first and then sort of very lightly pulled that epoxy around the top and around the drip. You don't want your epoxy to be really thick around those drips. It's easy for it to accumulate, so make sure that you take the time to give that additional attention to detail so that it looks like a nice and clean finish. As you can see, once I finished epoxying the bottom portion of the tumbler, I started at the top and added very little of epoxy at a time to spread around over top of those sprinkles and in between all of my drips. I ran over with my torch and then went back and made sure that my epoxy had not pulled around any of my drips. And then once this cured, I did go in around the rim and sanded that really well to make sure that that little bit of stainless was showing through, and then added on a final layer of Artistry's epoxy. I really love the way that this turned out. I think it's the perfect coffee cup, and I am super excited to give this one away. So congratulations, Shay. Thank you so much for your sweet comment and participating in the 10,000 subscriber and birthday giveaway in our Brittany Barnes Boutique Facebook group. I hope that you love this tumbler as much as I do. Also, a huge thanks to everyone else that did participate, and all the additional winners will be announced in my Facebook group today, May 10th. All the materials that I used in this tutorial will be listed down below, along with some coupon codes for y'all. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell in the corner to be notified anytime a new tutorial drops. That is all for today. I will see y'all next time.